I have a friend who had the good fortune of being a student of Leo Buscaglia when he was teaching at UCLA. And there was one time where she was talking to him after class, and she was sharing something very painful and intimate, and he was helping her with it. And he looked at his watch and he said, "Oh no, I have a very important faculty meeting I need to be at in 5 minutes." He looked at his watch again, and he looked at her, and she was kind of crying about something, and he said, "Okay, I'm here for you." And he spent another 5 or 10 minutes with her and completed with her. And then he ran to the elevator, and she walked towards him, and he didn't see her, and he didn't see anybody. There was nobody there. And she heard him, and he was holding himself like this. And she was right behind him, and he couldn't see her. And she heard him saying things like, "It's okay, Leo. It's okay. We're not being irresponsible by being late to this meeting. We were sharing our heart with a sister, and we were so good to stay with her. And we just love you so much, Leo. I love you so much for being so willing to open your heart to her. And no matter how they treat us when we're late, we know that we're late for a good reason. I love you, Leo." And he just kept saying things like that over and over while he was hugging himself. And she was very, of course, touched by that. And she's relayed that story to me, and I was very touched by that. And I want to learn to talk to myself that way. Don't you? And that's what today's topic is called sacred self-talk. And our self-talk, the chatter that goes on day to day, whatever it is, whether positive or negative, is a habit. It's constant. It's a steady stream of repetitive, either nonsense or divine love. But whatever it is, it's constant. Human beings have a tough time leaving their comfort zones, even if your comfort zone is misery. If you're used to it, then your mind equates it with survival. So even if it's abuse or guilt or shame, if you're used to it, there's a part of you that believes that you got to keep doing it that way in order to survive because it got you this far. So whenever we're going to explore something new, whether it be loving self-talk or a new relationship where we let in more love than whatever we feel accustomed to, it's always going to bring up that fear of the unknown, the fear of change, and the desire to stay within our comfort zone, even if it's pain and suffering. So what we're going to do today, we're going to explore the unknown. And before we do that, I want us to all take a look at that part of us that would rather be suffering, as long as it's familiar. And let's have a good laugh at that part of ourselves, because I found that that's the best way to transcend a pattern, is to look at it, be honest about it, and laugh it into the light. So this is a song I wrote from that place in me, that miserable place that just wants to stay miserable. And I wrote it as a complaint to God. You tell me to keep breathing, that your love will guide my way. Why does my little ego wanna say, don't take my pain away from me. Don't leave me here without my misery. 'Cause if I let go, then what would I do? This waking up is hard to do. Remember when I loved to fight, got so much pleasure just from being right. Now pointing fingers just makes me blue. This waking up is hard to do. They say that waking up is hard to do. So many lifetimes of sleeping through. Don't say, maybe I could. Instead of waking up, I think I'll hang on to my victimhood. My guru says only love is real. My therapist tells me to feel. Seems every year there's more issues. This waking up is hard to do. They say that waking up is hard to do. It's hard enough to turn off the tube. Don't say maybe I can. Instead of waking up, I think I'll stay in couch potato land. My challenges, they make me wiser. They help me grow just like some fertilizer. Wish I could grow without doo-doo. This waking up is hard to do. The Course in Miracles talks about how it's not our purpose to find love. It's our task in life to find and remove the blocks that we have placed to the awareness of love's presence. And once you remove the blocks, there's nothing there but love. You don't got to go searching for it. It's like a fish trying to search for water. So we're not going to really talk too much about sacred self-talk today. What we're going to talk about mostly is the not-so-sacred self-talk. So we can really look at it and bring it to the light, bring the subconscious sludge up into the consciousness where the light of awareness can transform it. This is the normal static of separation that most of us carry around. We're tuned into station WEGO, and that station constantly plays songs, the inner song of "You're not enough, he's not enough, it's not enough money, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough." And that's the station that humanity has been tuned into for a long time. The static of separation. I have this little list in my head. It's a magic list. It's a list of all the things that I think I need to accomplish before I can feel good enough, before I can pronounce myself enough. Why is it a magic list? Because whenever I check off something on the list, 3 new things magically appear at the bottom of the list. I call that a magic list. It's insatiable. Insatiable list. So one thing that I'm learning to do is to see that list clearly, because it's a game. And the game is, let's collect enough evidence to prove that Scott is not enough. Whenever the mind seeks to collect evidence, it's going to find it. And if there isn't enough evidence out there, it'll make some up. That's the nature of the projection screen called the mind. And if we desire to collect evidence for perfection and beauty and God's love, we will find it everywhere. But the same thing is true. If we desire to collect evidence to prove that we're unlovable or unworthy, we will find that evidence everywhere. It's the nature of the mind. There was a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer scheduled to be guillotined in this town. And the executioner said, "Okay, doctor, you're first. Do you want to face the blade up or down?" And the doctor said, "I'll face the blade up." So the executioner put the doctor's head up, and just as the blade was coming down, it stopped. And the executioner said, "Oh my God, this has never happened before. This must be a sign from God. Doctor, you're free to leave. I pardon you." So the doctor walked away. The executioner turns to the lawyer and says, "Your turn. You want to face the blade up or down?" The lawyer says, "I'll face the blade up," like the doctor. So the executioner puts the lawyer's head in the thing, and the lawyer is looking up, and the blade is released by the executioner, and again it stops 2 inches before it chops off his head. The executioner says again, "Oh my God, 20 years of cutting people's heads off, and this has never happened before, twice in one day. It must be a sign from God. This is a miracle. You're pardoned." So the lawyer skips away. So he turns to the engineer and says, "Your turn. You want to face the blade up or down?" The engineer says, "I'm not stupid. I'll face the blade up," like the doctor and the lawyer. So puts his head in the thing. And just as the executioner is about to release the blade, the engineer says, "Wait, I think I see the problem." This is the part of our mind, the human part, that is more interested in seeing and finding and fixing the problem than acknowledging the perfection of our lives unfolding in God's beauty. And this part of the mind needs to be healed. And healing happens through love, not through judgment, not through resistance, but through love. And one of the purest forms of love is awareness, just attention, loving attention, to observe this part of the mind, to observe that addiction to finding problems and trying to fix them. Just to observe that without judging it, without trying to make it go away. That awareness, that consciousness about it brings it into the light. And then Spirit does the rest. Your job is just to bring it to the light, bring the unconscious to the conscious, and observe it. I am a history buff. I love to kind of look at things and see when they first came about. And I like to understand my patterns and understand my past. It's definitely not a prerequisite for healing. Werner Erhard said that understanding is the booby prize. There's a lot of people sitting on therapist couches for 20 years, Woody Allen and the whole rest of them, that can tell you everything that happened in their childhood that makes them what they are today, but they're not changing their patterns. Understanding doesn't necessarily do it. But with that said, I want to tell you how I first learned the art of self-depreciation. Because isn't that what we're talking about here? Depreciating ourselves. The opposite of appreciation is depreciation. I was a kid that acted out my anger. Somehow I didn't feel safe to express it to my parents and to be vocal about it. So I expressed my anger and my rebellion and my frustration through different things I would do, including stealing money from my parents. Thank God, as of 2 weeks from today, I don't do it anymore. But in fact, my parole officer let me out just for this sermon. No, I'm teasing. But once a week, I would take $10 from the envelopes and stuff. And we had a wonderful housekeeper who was sort of my second mom, and she loved me unconditionally, and we had such a nice connection. And I didn't know, but my parents were observing the money missing, and they were thinking it might have been my housekeeper, Eunice. And they said to me one day, we've been noting that the money has been missing, and we're about to fire Eunice. Is there anything that you want to tell us? And I said, no. And I was so terrified. And for about a week, I lived without being able to sleep in shame and fear. And do I hide this? And do I share it? And I don't want to lose Eunice. And I just lived in a hell for a week. And finally, my parents said one more time, today's the day we're going to talk to Eunice and let her go. Are you sure there's nothing you want to tell us? And I said, I did it. And my mother said to me, and I can remember it clear as day, even though it happened 2 weeks ago. She said, we're not going to punish you for this, Scott. See how much you're punishing yourself and how hard you are on yourself about this. You really have been suffering about this, and I think you learned your lesson. Well, something internal happened in that moment, kind of a math equation. And the math equation was, if I beat myself up enough, my parents will leave me alone. If I punish myself, then the world won't punish me. And so was born this protection plan. I protect myself from disapproval and punishment by being the first one on the block to beat myself up about things. So this is the value of guilt. And I use value in quote, unquote. But it kept me safe and protected in my childhood. We don't do anything without some need being fulfilled, without some purpose behind it. When we gain weight, there's a purpose behind it. There's a purpose behind everything. There's a way that we're trying to take care of ourselves. And even guilt and self-talk that's negative is a way that we're trying to meet a human need. So it can be helpful to trace back what the birth, the origin of your pattern is, your addiction, and see what need you were trying to fulfill at that time. It may be outdated. It may be that you can serve that need a different way as an adult. So what I have discovered is that this pattern of being critical towards myself is an addiction. As I said earlier, it's a habit. It's a steady stream of repetitive, familiar, endless loop tape. One of the best ways to heal an old tape is to buy a new one. Better yet, CDs. Which are on sale. But having worked with the 12 steps of recovery for a number of substance addictions, I realized one day that I could actually work the 12 steps with my addiction to self-criticism. And so I coined the phrase, critiholism, to discuss my addiction. And I wasn't always a critaholic. There was a time where I was able to enjoy a few harmless judgments of myself or others at parties and social gatherings. And then as the disease started to kick in, I noticed I would wake up in the morning and start my day with a double shot of straight criticism. You know how it is, thinking all alone, thinking and driving. One day I was thinking and driving. And I got pulled over by a policeman who had clocked me on his radar, judging myself at 84 times per hour. I don't know what you have in Phoenix, but in California where I live, it's way over the limit. And he arrested me on the spot for inner child abuse, disturbing my own peace, and driving myself crazy. And it was a Sunday, and when I told him I was on my way to work, he added resisting arrest. So I went to court. I was asked to be my own prosecuting attorney because they knew I had so much experience in that role. And I agreed, and I was great. I won my case. I was found guilty. And the judge let me off with a suspended sentence and said that I should visit a hospital that specialized in the treatment of what he diagnosed me at, which was chronic critique syndrome. So I went to the hospital. The doctors who examined me immediately placed me on the critical list. And the main doctor said, look, young man, if you don't learn to be more gentle with yourself, you're probably going to have a cardiac arrest. And that's when I started to learn about resting my critic instead. And I'm going to share a song with you that I wrote during that time period. Once I thought by now I'd be Mr. Functionality, perfect and complete in every way. But I still get lost and then get found as I walk this sacred stumbling ground. I need to reassure me I'm okay. I'm all grown up, the world can see, but that is just one part of me. I'm also a tender child finding my way. I sometimes fumble in the dirt. I have a heart that can feel hurt. And so I hear the voice of spirit say, handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. There's a judge inside who's sometimes strong, convinced I'm doing my whole life wrong, so quick to rise up to my prosecution. But as I grow, it's getting clear the judge is just a voice of fear, and gentleness my only real solution. For how can a child of God feel safe if I'm trying to whip myself in shape? There must be another way to go. The petals of my heart open in a loving, safe environment. A flower grows and blooms when it's given the room. So handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. So I live life day to day. Some obstacles get sent my way, and though I get afraid, I see the strength that's birthed. I still get lost and then get found as I walk this sacred stumbling ground. But life is getting sweeter on this earth. Reaching out to make heart connections, making my peace with imperfections. Finding out the world needs what I have to give. For as I love the child in me, my heart extends so naturally. I can lend the world my shoulder when my cup is running over. So handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Handle yourself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Put it in the first person. Sing it with me, and if you like, put your hand on your heart. Myself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. I handle myself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. I handle myself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. I handle myself with care. There's a precious child of God in there. Thank you. About 5 years ago, I started to do Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, which is a book and a course on learning to free your own creativity. It's not just for artists, it's for every human being. And one of the tasks, one of the exercises that she recommends is what she calls the morning pages. Every day, first thing in the morning, getting up and writing 3 pages of non-stop free association without trying to censor it, without trying to make it positive. Just write. And I did that for a year as a discipline. And what I found was, more often than not, the first 2 pages was inner criticism. And it was like taking out the garbage. And then the 3rd page, I would spontaneously and pretty effortlessly start to write the way Leo Buscaglia talked to himself. I started to get into the self-love, the handling self with care. And this was a beautiful 2-part process, taking out the garbage of my subconscious and then replanting seeds in the garden of my mind with loving thoughts. And I noticed so many people try to plant a lovely garden without weeding it first, without paying attention to the chatter, without bringing the subconscious to the conscious. For most of us, that everyday inner critical chatter is so painful that we suppress it. We suppress it with busyness. We suppress it by taking care of other people. We suppress it in many different ways. And so the first step in any healing process is taking whatever you've been pushing down and bringing it up to the conscious awareness. And then you have choice. Because once you bring it up, then you can choose to plant new seeds. So I was doing this process. And I was amazed at how negative I could be. But I also was amazed at how much perspective I was starting to gain by doing this every day. I started to detach from identifying myself as the critic. I would write these things, I would look at them, and I would say, oh my God, that's the way my mother and father used to talk to me, to themselves, to each other. That's not any creative, original thinking on my part. That's just something I borrowed. I just soaked up the consciousness of humankind. And here it is in my brain. That is a certain kind of healthy detachment where I begin to identify myself as the observer observing the chatter rather than the chatter itself. That freed me to laugh at it, to distance myself from it, and ultimately to change it. Once you begin to detach and observe it swimming around and say, that's not my thoughts, that's all the suffering of humanity, like a radio station that somehow I've tuned into. Those aren't my thoughts, that's not me I'm talking about. I began to write appreciations on that third page. And now what I do is I keep an appreciation journal. And every day after I write in my journal, I'll get the negativity out, I write in my appreciation journal, and I write at least 5 things that I appreciate about myself, seeking to build chatter, habitual chatter of self-love and self-appreciation. And it's not selfish, because once I fill myself up with that, then there's nothing to do but give it away. Once I fill myself up with positive chatter, then all I want to do is share it with others and lift other people's self-esteem the way I feel my self-esteem being lifted. You all know about what a flight attendant says when you're taxiing down the runway. In the event of some kind of emergency, when the oxygen mask falls down, if you're traveling with a small child or somebody who's acting like a small child, place the mask on yourself first. Take care of yourself first so that you'll have energy left over to take care of your loved ones. It's so obvious on an airplane. How obvious it is in your own life. How do you practice that in your own life? And just imagine what it would be like to talk to yourself on a daily basis the way Leo was talking to his little boy by that elevator. What would it be like? I'm not going to just ask you that question. I want you to practice. Close your eyes. Picture yourself as a child. Project the child about 6 inches away from your mind and allow that child to just be with you. And just notice, is that child sad, happy, scared? How does that child feel about being with you? The first thing before we get into the self-love part of this is just become aware of how you've been treating that child. And that child represents your humanness, the parts of you that aren't perfect yet, and parts of you that have made mistakes and that struggle with certain areas of your life that aren't in the light yet, uncoordinated, clumsy, whatever labels you have. That child is your vulnerability. The scared little girl or little boy. And notice how you've been relating to this child, whether you've been relating with open arms and patience and compassion, or whether you've been carrying a bit of a conditional love towards this child, shape up or ship out, impatience, self-judgment. Be the observer, observing this relationship, observing the mind. This is taking inventory in this moment. And notice that whatever you've been doing with this child, it's just what you learned in childhood. It's what you, the consciousness of humankind, has given you. So there's no need to feel guilty for this. Now, open your arms as the adult, the loving parent to this child, and practice loving as God loves. See if the child comes into your arms, and in silence, practice saying things of great love and compassion. This is your beloved child, in whom God is well pleased. God does not make junk. And if you've been telling this child that it's defective or damaged goods, please apologize. Dear child, I am so sorry that I haven't treated you with the utmost divine love and respect that you deserve. You are not defective. You are God's beloved child. I am so proud of you. And I love you. And I know you learn and grow by making mistakes, by falling down, that's just the process of life. And from this moment on, I refuse to be critical towards you while you are learning and growing. I refuse to do that anymore. I love you. And you find your own words, your own messages of love and honoring to embrace this child with.
Life is a pretty great place to be if you don't mind mystery. If you can keep an open mind and dance when the coals are burning hot, and forget them when they're not, and just move with the energy and revel in the sunshine when it's on your face, and put a layer on when winter takes its place. Love is a very sweet place to be if you don't mind company and a little bit of pain sometimes, for we are connected at the source, and life will take its course and move us into unity. I feel a family growing based on love and trust. We're such a flock of angels watching over us, that I feel a hope I've never felt, that the hardest rock will melt and a new landscape will come in view. For earth, when in love and light and grace, we begin to take our places and each do what we came to do. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been. We can break the patterns now and start again. place to be. If you don't mind harmony, if you can keep an open heart and dance when the coals are burning hot, and forget them when they're not, and just move with the energy of life. La 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 in love. La 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 life. Rub your feet together, and when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the room.